Hello, my name is Dan Johnson and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my 2025 Steelbook collection update. There are now over 30 releases in this range, so an awful lot to cover today. I was once able to hold them all like this in my hands. I think there's actually a thumbnail of me doing that at one stage, holding them like this, and now, well, it wouldn't even fit in the frame. It takes up practically the entire shelf behind me. So I think we should get started. And the first one is a bit odd because I actually can't play this release. This is a Region 1 release, not a Region 2, as all UK DVDs are. This is a Region 1 release for Doctor Who Series 4 in this very nice DVD steelbook. This was kindly given to me by John Fisher. It contains the entirety of Series 4. It's got a nice bit of weight to it. It has a lovely sort of beehive effect. On the back, we have an image of the Supreme Dalek as well. It's a very nice release. I think it's kind of become obsolete in the same way that Steelbook DVDs just aren't made anymore, but it's a really nice, odd thing to have in my collection. Before we get to the classic releases, I'd like to talk about these two films. These are the Peter Cushing movies. So we have the Daleks here with this lovely, unique looking steelbook with a great design on the front, and we have Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Yes, I did have to check because the numbers are difficult to remember. These were both Zavvi exclusives. These came out quite a while ago, and these were restored film turned into Blu-ray. They did an absolutely brilliant job, and the colours look amazing. The second one is definitely my favourite within the two. Bernard Cribbins is in the second one as well, and these are retellings of the stories, the Daleks and the Daleks Invasion of Earth, that are done in the Hartnell run, but these came out in the 60s to kind of capitalize, a few years later after their releases on TV, to capitalize on this Dalek mania. Then a couple of years ago, the two films were restored once again to 4K quality, which is fine, to be honest. It was decent as a Blu-ray when given these brand new, colourful, comic booky designs, which are really nice. A little bit too loud for me personally, but I do like them. They are nice looking steelbooks. They also released like box set versions of this to really capitalize on Dalek Mania in 2022. These were nice additions, but I don't know if the 4K quality was really very good. I find 4K very difficult to tell. It really does depend on the film that you're watching at the time. The Blu-ray versions, I think, are excellent though. At the end of last year, we were given the War Games in colour, which was a 90-minute cut down of the War Games and newly restored to colour, and it looked fantastic. The year before, we had the Daleks, which was a pretty solid entry in this sort of new colorization series that we seem to be getting. Some of the editing was a bit jarring, and the music felt very abrupt and very loud in terms of the mixing. The War Games was a much bigger improvement to that. Daleks in colour is a nice way to watch this story if you don't have like 2.5 hours to spare when it's only cut down to 70 minutes. But it's a nice, fun addition. Up next, we have, I think, the most recent animation, and that is for the Celestial Toymaker. This animation was interesting for the fact they took a lot of creative license with it. Some of them can be very rigid and very set to the storyboard. With this one, they took creative license to make everything seem bigger, because obviously with the production limits and they're telling a story that's very fantasy based, is almost sort of based on sort of the illusions of, chasms and being in a different reality. They were able to take a lot of that and sort of add in these different levels and make the story more appealing to watch. It's a story that I didn't massively love, and I was hoping that I would. But the cover, the animation, and the behind-the-scenes documentaries on this, including a very cool thing about getting companions of the Doctor, or sort of like eras of Doctor Who, in to do an escape room, was a lot of fun. Now we are bringing back the Chumleys in Galaxy 4, a story that I did not like very much at all. I watched it when it was released. The animation was your sort of standardy 2D animation that they do for these things, which was perfectly adequate. It's just that the story, I just could not get behind it in any sense. The Chumleys are fun additions, but this is a really weird part of Doctor Who history. But when it came to animating a Hartnell story, I was surprised that they went with something as obscure and sometimes hated as Galaxy 4. But the Steelbook itself has this gorgeous orange tinge, which is very nice and appeals nicely on the shelf. We have a Steelbook of The Savages coming out later this year, which is quite exciting, a story that I don't know very much about at all. But that is all we have for Hartnell. We now go on to the Patrick Troughton stuff in terms of these Steelbooks, where there are 8 releases. So here we go. We start off with The Power of the Daleks, his first story. You can see his Doctor slowly begin to take shape. And this was probably one of my first classic stories that I really got into. I mean, this was the first animation I bought because, as far as I was concerned, this was the first one when I was active enough on the internet to see an animation come out. I didn't initially buy this Steelbook. I originally had the Blu-ray. No, I didn't. I had the DVD. And over many years, and I think during lockdown, I was browsing eBay looking to sort of fill the gaps in my collection, and I found this. I do frequently say, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I did buy this initially on Kex, and it arrived completely smashed in, like someone had trodden on it or hit it with a hammer. It was absolutely broken, and it was gutting, but eventually I did get my hands on this Steelbook, which has a really gorgeous design. Next, we have the Underwater Menace with this very cool cover with this sort of fish demon thing in the background of shot. I cannot remember a lot about this story, to be honest. I know I've watched it. It has an evil scientist and very cool looking fish creatures, but this is definitely one for me to rewatch in the new year. I was not aware for many years that the Macra from Gridlock actually appeared in a classic episode of Doctor Who. So I have the Macra Terror, a story where crabs are hiding in the bottom of a base, and they've once again taken some creative license in making the crabs more threatening, because I think originally they were like models, like tiny models, and I imagine watching that nowadays would not give you the same satisfaction as seeing these huge crabs appear as the cliffhanger. The cover itself has a very minimal design with that looming crab in the background, as pre-mentioned. It's a story I've watched a couple of times now, and I do really like it. Up next, we have the first story where the Doctor was able to film in Heathrow. There's a very cool moment with the plane landing right by the TARDIS, which I really liked. And the idea of the faceless ones is quite cool, but I do admit that the animation probably takes away a little bit from the faceless ones, because they are very sort of cartoonish by design, and I think that seeing something more practical and more grotesque would probably work better than a big sort of green mesh over someone's face. This 6-parter though is a lot of fun, lots of locations, lots of interesting moments, so definitely one that I'd say is recommended. I also think it's one of the cheapest to buy secondhand currently. And now it's one of my favourite stories from Patrick Troughton, one that made me really like his Doctor, and that is Evil of the Daleks. It's an iconic story. It has the Emperor Dalek as seen on the cover here that takes pride of place right in front of the TARDIS. The story itself has a lot of locations, a lot of interesting design work in terms of the house that they're in, which I quite liked. So it's got a strong setting. There's a few moments I would admit where I feel like the animation was slightly lacking. There's a fight scene I remember with Jamie and a sort of henchman character that I didn't think looked very good at all. But Evil of the Daleks is a lot of fun to watch simply for the historical aspect, and sort of seeing how Russell T Davies would later take on the idea of an Emperor Dalek and sort of adapt it into Parting of the Ways and Bad Wolf. One thing that this story does have going for it is that it's a 7-parter and it's very ambitious. And now we have 2 Patrick Troughton stories that both go up against the Great Intelligence. The first one being The Abominable Snowman. This story is fun for the Yetis stomping around, but I have to say that animation cannot help the fact that this story is just slow. The dialogue is slow. Everything that they do seems to take ages, and I do sort of struggle to get through this. I really liked it when I first watched it, but when I watched it again and I knew where it was going more or less, watching it again, it became a bit of a slog. I think I may have even stopped watching it on the Blu-ray and started using the iPlayer version in order to speed it up a little bit. And then we have The Web of Fear, a story that I do really love. This was quite a controversial one for many reasons, in fact. First off, it's only one episode that they had to animate. It's only episode 3, I believe, that needed to be animated. And with that, they went with a more of a test. They used a lot of mocap, and the animation itself was very rudimentary. The expressions were not quite right, where there'd be a lot going on in someone's actions that didn't feel quite like it matched up to the audio, or faces when they weren't being motion captured or animated would be very blank and unexpressive. But the story itself is great. It has Unit, it has the underground, it has Yetis once again. It's a lot of fun, this story. And our final release from the second Doctor is Fury from the Deep. It's evil seaweed. It was a lot of fun. It was very camp, but there was some really dark, scary moments. Once again, I don't think the animation particularly helps the idea of the seaweed, because there's just this thing flopping around. The cover itself is a little bit bland, I think, in many respects, but it's rather effective for that. Once again, the colouring on it does make it stand out on the shelf. I do believe this story taking place on oil rigs is not a very popular one, because the price for this is very minuscule. When it came out, it was about £30. I honestly think this one is down to about 20. I've seen it in Kex, etc. for about that. So this one is not one, if you're trying to like buy loads and sell them and use them as an investment, this is definitely not one of them to do it with. Our next story is, though, this is Spearhead from Space. This is a very exclusive Zarvi Steelbook that was released a long time ago now. I bought this second hand. What's interesting about this one is that it's not like metalish. It's very plasticky in terms of Steelbook. This is the third Doctor's first story. It is a really iconic, brilliant episode that I do really adore, and was able to get this treatment due to the fact that its footage was filmed on film, so it was easily upscaled into Blu-ray. This was released before we started getting like the collection range. I suppose in many respects, this very cool release is about to become obsolete when we get the collection box set later this year. Our next release has sort of become obsolete, in fact, with the collection box sets, and that is Shada. So this is a partly missing episode in the fact that it was never filmed. Because of strikes, they were unable to complete Shada, but they had location footage, and the location footage is so incredibly strong. It's a story written by Douglas Adams and takes place predominantly in Cambridge, and then bits that were filmed that would have been filmed later in studio ended up being animated, and they brought back a lot of the original cast to do so. I really adored this story. The trouble with this release, though, is that this story, in this version, in this form, is in fact presented as like a really long movie, and it's a 6-part epic, 2.5-hour movie to go through, which I did struggle with, and I was like, wait, they've not put it as episodes? Blimey. And it took me a very, very long time to get through this one, because I wasn't really used to Classic Who at that point. I was sort of dipping my toes in, but I did buy this brand new when it came out. But in the collection box sets, they managed to add in titles and credits and turn it into the 6 episodes that it was originally intended to be. And now we move into a slightly more photorealistic design for our episodes. We have the complete Series 1, a absolutely gorgeous Steelbook. I mean, look at the colours on that. It looks amazing. It's an excellent piece of art. I think it was done by Lee Binder. Then we come on to Series 2. This was the first Steelbook that I bought for this collection, unintentionally not realising that Series 1 had already been released. Luckily, I went back and was able to purchase it for its retail price, but this is what sort of sold it all to me. This, for me, was the first time that I was able to see my series of Doctor Who, my New Who run, turned into Blu-ray episodes and were being presented to us with gorgeous new artwork. Once again, I love the image on the back. There was once art cards. I think they're in here now, but I used to have them up on the wall behind me for many, many years. and once again, just astounding artwork. This next Steelbook is probably not one of my favourites, and that is the Steelbook for Series 3. I think it's the colour. This sort of pinkish, purplish thing does not really work for me. Plus, I find the fact that Martha is sort of in this tiny little corner quite odd. I feel like this should be her series, and she should be more central, as other companions will be, as you'll see later. Would you look at that? Series 4 has nailed it. Donna does take centre frame here with the Doctor in this nice fiery background that I love, and the art colour style matches this series, in my opinion. Turn it over and you look at the back. The image of Davros and the Daleks and the TARDIS is also really nicely done. Every time I take this one out, I kind of forget that it's there, and I just notice it as I'm putting it back, going, oh wow, yeah, that is great. The next release is the David Tennant specials from 2009 to 2010. This Steelbook is really nice on the back. The artwork for this one is gorgeous there. On the front, my criticism is that it's simply too dark. You can't quite see that that is the Doctor in some angles. I can see the regeneration, but I feel like that just needs its exposure bringing up a little bit, just so that I can see the Doctor in the TARDIS. It makes the thing sort of stand out nicely on camera, admittedly, but maybe not so much in real life. And then we come into Matt Smith's time as the Doctor. He has 3 series, so 3 Steelbooks, and of course a 50th one that we'll be talking about next. Series 5, 6, and 7 are absolutely gorgeous in terms of their art style. I kind of have the same thing to say about each one. Both have lovely designs that represent their series. The back artwork, once again, is astounding. You know, the Series 7 one, I think, is probably my favourite in the way that the first side is about Amy and the back is about Clara, and they are nicely representing both halves of the series here. The Series 5 one incorporates the very nice Vincent van Gogh painting into the Steelbook as well, and the Series 6 one has a nice spooky atmosphere with the silence in the back, and of course that impossible astronaut haunting me there with an image of Matt Smith regenerated. As promised, we now have the 50th anniversary specials. Once again, a gorgeous Steelbook. I think this might be my favourite, to be honest. The way it incorporates so much is brilliant. We have the Daleks, we have the War Doctor, we have this sort of worn-torn Gallifrey. The image on the back is simplistic but really effective. This set is not just the 50th anniversary, but also contains the name of the Doctor, just in case you haven't bought Series 7 and you have no idea what's going on. The time of the Doctor, so you get his regeneration story and sort of encapsulates these sort of 3 specials, I suppose. And then you have Adventure in Space and Time. Ironically, about 2 months before this one was announced, I ended up buying the collector's box set of this on DVD, which also contains an Adventure in Space and Time, but I was yet to watch it because I think I was watching something else like The Walking Dead at the time, and I didn't get quite through to watching it. But when I did, I was so impressed with Adventure in Space and Time, as many Whovians will tell you. Of course, with the regeneration of Matt Smith, it brings us on to Peter Capaldi's run as the Doctor, and Series 8 has this lovely purple Steelbook. The image on the back, once again, is far superior to the image on the front. It is gorgeous here with Clara, the Cybermen. I did notice, and I think I mentioned this in my unboxing, that you can go and check out if you want to. I did the series of these Steelbooks, so you can see them all in the playlist that I shall be linking now. That the disc artwork for this one is different to the original disc artwork that you'd get. So most of these releases will more or less have the same discs and have the same look to them, but with this one they have the same discs in terms of what's on it, but the actual rim is now following this lovely purple design. Let's just take a moment to mourn the fact that I don't have the Series 9 Steelbook because it is still about £600 on eBay, which is ridiculous. And saying that, even a few years ago, it was over 1,000. So hopefully it's going down and eventually it will become a reasonable price to buy. But we do have the Series 10 Steelbook. So this was a release that was an Amazon exclusive, I believe, so it was not sold in all shops like HMV, etc. It's a really nice Steelbook with this gorgeous artwork on the front that's almost sort of
painted for you. It's a gorgeous piece of digital painting, and the background itself and the spine also having that same tie-dyed image. That's the best way I can describe it. I'm sorry. I'm probably completely incorrect. Series 10 was a series that I didn't spend too much time on, in terms of it's not really one that I'd go and watch again, but buying this Steelbook did make me revisit the series properly and go all the way through it, and I really, really enjoyed it. There were some faults in there, of course, but there is so much to appreciate with this series. Then we have the Steelbook for Series 11, one that I think is probably the weakest in terms of design and probably in terms of episodes as well. It's very minimalist, and I don't think it particularly works as a thing to show off. I get what they're going for. I just feel like these Steelbooks should be celebrating their series a lot more, and this one comes out as quite dull. They vastly improved that though with Series 12, which has this lovely red design to it, with the Master there on the front and our companions on the back in this gorgeous painting. This is a series that I've talked about quite a few times because I did reviews on it as it was initially released, and a video that I'm quite proud of is a video I did about Ryan Sinclair and talking about his character throughout the series. We are coming towards the end now with Doctor Who Flux, which is 3 years old this year. Blimey. This was a series I enjoyed and also hated at the same time, but the artwork itself I think is absolutely gorgeous, with Jodie taking front and centre here with this lovely bit of artwork, and the companions on the back in a very similar vein. The spine itself for this one just stands out nicely and has so much life brought into it. I really like it. They continued this theme into the 13th Doctor specials, which were in 2022, which means Flux is actually 4 years old this year, not 3. Blimey. We have Jodie on the front there, celebrating her time as the Doctor, and the back for this artwork is also one of my favourites. It's so bright, it's full of very cool characters like Ace there with her baseball bat, the TARDIS cracking, and this sort of, I'm going to call it flux energy, this sort of bright light coming through and holds it all together. And then with the regeneration of the 13th Doctor, Doctor Who changed forever. We had Russell T Davies coming back and a brand new Disney deal, and luckily the tradition of the Steelbooks continued with the 60th anniversary specials. Once again with this very bright, colourful image of the 14th Doctor and Donna. I do think the face for David Tennant is a little bit weird. I mean, the figure was a lot worse, but something about the face just makes him look slightly out of proportion. I don't know what. We have all 3 of the specials listed here. We also have some villains on the back. Of course, the Toymaker, the Wrath Warriors, I believe they're called, and the Meep. Obviously, they didn't put the knot things on there. That would be a bit awkward. I was talking about proportions before, but imagine if those things are on it. And finally, we have my Steelbook for the complete Season 1, of course, Shooty's first series, also featuring the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road, which is also why I'm holding out on buying the Joy to the World one in the hope that we get another release just like this for Series 2. The artwork for this is gorgeous. The way that it opens out and sort of creates one full image is a really nice idea. It's bold. It has Shooty looking incredible on the front. It is a really lovely piece of merchandise. Of course, I've not really spoken a lot about bonus material that you can get from these things. There is nothing exclusive that comes out in this Steelbook that's different to the Blu-ray. It's all the same stuff, and most of it, I think all of it in fact, is available on iPlayer or YouTube. But when I look back to the first couple of series of David Tennant's run, when I was buying them initially and went back and sort of picked up a few that I was missing, I really appreciated the fact that all of this content has been put on. I did get slightly annoyed recently when they were talking about deleted scenes, which were obviously never put into the Steelbook because they came out after the release, which was annoying. But then again, this is, to me, like an archive of the series, so it's a shame they're not on there, but it has everything else. And so, thank you very much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you are new. I mean, what's next for these Steelbooks? I guess they just keep cranking them out. I'm hoping for maybe like 2 a year, where we get a new series, so, you know, a one for each Shooty season, and then we get a animation of a Hartnell or a Troughton story or something along those lines. That would be a nice way of sort of adding a nice balance to things. I am also quite interested, and it's maybe something that I will actually produce a video on myself during this year, about the idea of having 4Ks in terms of Doctor Who rather than having Blu-rays, because I noticed a lot of the YouTube videos that they're posting about Series 1, they're saying, you know, Space Babies in 4K kind of thing. And I'm going, well, why aren't we releasing them in 4K? And iPlayer has them on 4K, so why can't we have releases that are 4K? Although part of me hopes that doesn't happen, because of course if it does, then it means that I will probably end up spending more money on things I don't need. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you get a like, subscribe if you're new, and I shall see you soon. Goodbye.